What I wanted to do is I want to explain two different approaches in the Rishonim on understanding the concept of Tashbitu that is going to, which I don't think we're not going to get to today, but actually will have tremendous nafkamina in how to understand a couple of questions that the Mishnah Berurah has. Maybe we'll do with Halacha L'Maisa at some point, maybe next week as a closing up of the Zman. We go according to the university Zman. So next week will be the last week of Zman. And then we'll pick up maybe a new topic, or I'll do a mini topic for next week. Then we'll start again, something a little bit fresh after when everyone gets back in January. So these two different approaches in the Rishonim are from the approach of Totofos and the approach of Rashi. They have two different approaches, and they have two different ways of understanding some major concepts. So let's again review very quickly, and that is the opinion of source number one. It's the Totofos found on Daf Dalid Amud Beis Midoraisa Bitul Ba'al Masagi. So at the beginning, he starts off by quoting the approach of Rashi. Rashi says, "Perish B'Kontrus Midichsiv Tashbitu V'Lo Chsiv Teva Arum Alma Hashpata Belev Hi." Says Rashi's understanding of Tashbitu is what? Hashpata belev. It's nullification. It's something which I do, right? I'm not active. I'm not doing anything that requires necessarily anything a ma'isa per se. It's something which I can do. Bitul belev. Now, one of the rationales for Rashi is, of course, well, he knows Unkelus. Unkelus says the same thing, which is Tashbitu Tevatlun. The other approach where Rashi might get it from again is the Chumash. If someone asks you, on Shabbos we need to do Shabbos. What is lishbot? What is hashbata? So that is considered refraining from doing malacha, right? So again, it's this passive type of behavior. Says Rashi, what is tashbitu? So we know that we must do tashbitu sior mebatechem. How do I do this according to Rashi? Bitul belev. Bitul al masagi. What is the what does this mean? So that I told you we found a really good definition, which is source number 2. What is Rashi's definition of what this hashbata looks like? So Rashi says, take a look. It's that second line in that Rashi, which is found in Daled Amud Aleph, but it's source number 2. Hal amar lekaman desagi le bitul ba'alma. What does it mean? Later on, the Gemara will say the bitul ba'alma. You're allowed to do bitul. Mesiach date mine. What does a person need to do? My relationship with my chametz is hesach hadat. I am totally cut off from my chametz. Umashvele ka'afra, and I look at it like dust of the earth. That is my relationship to the chametz. It's dust. I effectively say my bread, my cakes, my cookies, my crackers. It is as if it is tantamount to dust of the earth. Bitul ba'alma sagi, and that is sufficient. And with that, a person does not transgress ba'yira ba'yamatze. Does not transgress ba'yira ba'yamatze. Bitul ba'alma sagi. Where do we see Rashi get this from? So Rashi can tell. What do you mean? It's source 3, it's source 4. The Gemara gives an example. Take a look at source 3. The Gemara later on, Amar Ravacha bar Yaakov, Hacha b'talmud Yoshev ni Rabba Askinan. V'niskar sheyish Isa milgul gelas besoch beisa. A guy is learning, he's in yeshiva, and he's sitting in the yeshiva, and he's like, oh my goodness, I have an absolute beautiful Isa, I have some dough that's sitting in my home, and it's Erev Pesach. What am I going to do? No problem. He's worried that maybe this will become chametz. Therefore, what can you do? Mevatel, he just does bitul, even though this Isa, this dough might become chametz. He's sitting in his home. You don't have to do anything. Just say, the Isa in my home. It is as if it is dust of the earth, and that is sufficient. The other example, in source 4, a person is doing a mitzvah, whether it's Shchitat the Pesach, whether it's a bris milah, he's going to his in-laws' house to have a meal. So remember, he has chametz in his house. If he's able to go back, and he's able to destroy it, and he's able to continue doing his mitzvah, so go and do it. If not, mevatlo belibo, it is sufficient to do bitul. So says Rashi, we see bitul works. It's not a problem. That is the approach of Rashi. Says the Balei Totofos, not so. Take a look back at source number 1. Says Totofos, no. What is Bitul? Go to the end there, because again, I don't want to go back to what we did in terms of the proof from another Gemara. Let's get to the punchline. Midoraisa, second line from the bottom. Bitul ba'masagi mitam demacher shebitlo have hefker v'yatza mirshuso. Says Totofos, what are you talking about? You know Bitul? You know what we need to do? We must make it hefker. We have to transform it into something which is ownerless. That is what matters. Oh, we said this last week. What are we going to do with the Gemara that says to make something hefker you need 3 people? What do we say? We said, well, the Gemara in the Darim, that's only midorabanan. Midoraisa, it is sufficient to make hefker with 1 person. Chachamim came along and said you need 3. That is a chumra of Chazal. Mikaradin, 1 is sufficient. By the way, as we said last week, maybe even 2 weeks ago, I don't recall anymore, that's a big chiddush of Totofos. That you can just say that 3, that you can make something hefker with 3 is a chumra midrabanan. Difficult to say that. We don't see any source for that necessarily. But so Totofos wiggle room when he has to explain, because he says it's hefker. Okay. So last week, a couple of questions were asked. I don't know if anyone remembers the questions, so I'm going to reiterate the question. The question is, what really is the machlokas between them? What's bothering Totofos? So here's what I'm thinking. What is the status of before Chatzot on Erev Pesach? What is the status? Meaning, what is the zone? For Totofos, Tashbitu only begins when we say that we have to do Tashbitu. For Totofos is Tavarun. Let's take it and let's burn it. When do I do this? After Chatzot. Meaning, for Totofos there's 1 zone. And this zone is post Chatzot. Post Chatzot, if I have Chametz, what do I need to do with it? Incinerate it. What about before Chatzot? Totofos says before Chatzot, just a regular day. It's a regular day. And how can I get rid of my chametz on a regular day? I don't look at Or Chaim. I look at Choshen Mishpat. I flip the Choshen Mishpat. I say, how do I remove things that I own? Answer, I make something hefker. How do I make something hefker? I mafkir it. 1 with 3. That's the shita of Totofos. And that's what he says is sufficient. I need to make this ownerless. That is my goal. For Rashi, you don't understand. Rashi says, no. There's something, the chiddush of the Torah is Tashbitu seor mibatechem. That is not referring to after Chatzot. That is referring to before Chatzot. And what do I do before Chatzot? A chiddush min haTorah. What do you want from Rashi? It's supposed to be in the Torah. Tashbitu seor mibatechem. Bitul ba'almasagi. So what do I do before Chatzot? I make my chametz not ownerless. Hesech hadat. I am no longer tethered to my chametz. That's what I think Rashi is saying. And by the way, when does this zone begin? So perhaps one could argue that this zone begins Shloshim Yom Kodem HaChag. 30 days before the Chag, I got to know what's going on. I can begin to start making, I got to know what to do with my chametz. Right? Where do we see the Shloshim Yom Kodem HaChag? So the Gemara later on talks about a guy who goes out on a caravan. A guy who goes out on a caravan 30 days before Pesach. What does he need to do? Is he obligated to deal with his chametz? The answer is we know. 30 days before, you got to deal with your chametz. You got to figure out what to do. Right? A person who leaves before 30 days and is not going to come back at all, doesn't have to do with his chametz, perhaps at all. Okay. Now, all a person would need to do is, in fact, you wouldn't have to burn it. All you'd have to do is, if you're going more than 30 days before, you just have to perhaps render it ownerless, and that's it, because you're not worried that you're going to encounter your chametz over Pesach if you're not planning coming back. If you're planning coming back during Pesach, that's a different story, and you might have to do something much more stringent with your chametz. So what the Rashi is in fact saying is that the morning of Pesach and the weeks preceding Pesach are in fact governed by something which is a chiddush min haTorah, and that is, how do I deal with my chametz? For Tosfot, you know what it's all about? I look up Choshen Mishpat. Choshen Mishpat says, how do I make something ownerless? Oh, there's a concept called Hefker. Oh, there's a concept called Hefker. I mafkir it. Now, we're familiar with this Hefker concept. We are familiar with Hefker concept from Shemitah. If I have a field, a backyard, and on Shemitah, what must I do with my field? It's essentially, it's Hefker, isn't it? Anyone can come and take food. Now, by the way, here's the problem. Am I allowed to take food from my produce during Shemitah? Am I allowed to take food?
Yeah, only as much as you need, though.
Only as much as I need, right? So I'm hungry. It's 10 o'clock in the morning. I really feel like an apple, so I'm allowed to go to my backyard, and I'm allowed to take an apple and eat it. Because when it's Hefker, it means that anyone can take it. Now, part of anyone is me. I'm anyone. Now, this is where Totofos is going to run into trouble. Because Totofos created a construct, and he looked for a construct that existed in halachic terminology, and he turned to Hefker, he's going to have a bit of a conundrum. Because, well, if it's Hefker and anyone can take it, you can take it too. If you could take it too, you're still connected to your chametz. It's not going to be a problem.
But nobody can take it.
What?
Nobody can take it.
But why not? Oh, usually no one can take it because it's chametz. Right. So when you, for Tosfot, when he says it's Hefker, anyone can come take it, is your goal to make it ownerless? For Tosfot, that's the goal, make it ownerless.
Isn't it like a Hefker for, in the sense that it's ownerless and therefore non-Jews could?
And so Tosfot says in that second line there, Bitul have Hefker v'yatsa mirshuto umuter. Because it's not mine. Because the Gemara says that it's lacha. The goal is what's the pasuk in the Torah? Tashbitu. Lo yireh lecha chametz. That's a pasuk. Lo yireh lecha chametz. Lecha b'shalachirim ataruah. Right? I'm allowed to walk down the street on Pesach and see bread somewhere else, but it can't be yours. So what Tosfot is saying is that it's not mine. If it's hefker, if my goal is that it's not lecha. Lo yireh lecha chametz. How do I make sure lo yireh lecha chametz? I make my food hefker. By making my chametz hefker, it's no longer lecha. Lo yireh lecha chametz. Well, it's not lecha if I'm mafkir it. For Tosfot, that's the goal. It's not mine.
So he doesn't have a connection to it, even if he could take it.
So, which is strange. Here's the issue. But he can't take it. But for Tosfot, it doesn't matter if it's ownerless, right? So don't take it.
Whereas if you're Mevatel something, there's...
I think this was bothering me last week. So, I don't know, I think it was Ezra asked last week, well, what's a higher level of disconnecting the chametz? Hefker or making it dust?
Making it dust.
So I want to argue that making it dust is a greater separation, removal than Hefker. Because Hefker is still saying, I can still take it, can't I? But if I make something dust, in my mind, psychologically, emotionally, right? I'm not making it dust. I'm not, I don't need to consider it to make it dust. But that's what Rashi says. What's his language? For Rashi, that's all you need. When you make bitul balev, that's what you're saying, that this cake, by the way, here's a chiddush, it can still be his. I mean, it can still be my possession, can't it, right? It's still in my house. But what do you want from Rashi? The Gemara says it can still be in your house. Where? How do I know this? Because the Gemara says it. If you're about to offer the Korban Pesach or give a bris milah to your kid, and you don't have time to go back and forth, what do? You do bitul balev. Right? That's sufficient. Doesn't say anywhere about Hefker. We don't need to make it ownerless. We need to disconnect from it. That is, I believe, finally, it was driving me crazy how to come up with the right language. I think that's the correct language to use to make the distinction between Tosfot and Rashi. That Tosfot wants to make it ownerless. That's his goal. For Rashi, ownerless doesn't matter. For Rashi, it's how do I disconnect from it? And how do I do that? I essentially make a statement, I transform it into dust of the earth.
So how does Tosfos deal with the issue that you could...
what was that?
How does Tosfos deal with the issue that you could potentially become the owner?
I mean, it doesn't matter. Their goal is that it shouldn't be lacha. Lo yireh lacha chametz. It's not lacha. You're not over on Bayra by Matzah. I mean, it's almost as if Tosfos focused on this ownership requirement, and if you don't own it, that's all that matters. Don't reclaim it. You're not allowed to take it. Don't reclaim it because then you own it. Just so leave the chametz there. Don't pick it up. Don't acquire it. Don't make a kinyan. Don't be zakin. The Ramban even uses the language of zakin. Don't be zochet. Leave it. Don't.
Aren't there certain actions that require you to make it mafkir though? So you gotta make it hefker?
Okay, so that's where Rashi also looks very, as they say, sparkles. Why? Because Tosfot is saying, be mafkir. Oh, I should say this. This is important. If I do an action, and this is another question that was brought up last week. If I make a statement to make something hefker using words, one could say, the Gemara Nedarim says, if you want to mafkir something with words, what do you need to do? Do it in front of 3 people. Bitul Rabbanan, Totofos, Rashi, Minatori, and 3 people. But if I do an action that demonstrates hefkerness, I don't need to do it in front of 3 people. And one of the ways I could demonstrate and make it hefker, ownerless, is I take my bread and I put it by the bottom of my driveway. Remember, we were talking about, how like some guys, they make money off of this, right? What do they do? I don't know what it is in Toronto, but in Thornhill, Thursday is your recycling day, right? And your garbage day, garbage every other week, and recycling every week. It's crazy, right? So, some people, it's not worth their time. We'll put in the recycling bin a wine bottle or a beer can, which are worth money. Beer bottles or beer cans are worth money in Toronto. They're worth 5 cents for a beer can. 20. A can is worth 2? Oh, okay, fine. I didn't even know that. So, what are some? Have you ever seen these guys that come around? They collect all these cans and bottles. You never seen them, right? Or what they'll do is if you put out, let's say, when I was moving, so all of a sudden you clear out stuff, right? So I had this metal, old, this 50-year-old bed frame thing. So metal is worth something. Not to me. But if you're a scrap heap and you collect enough of it, you can collect it and I guess trade in for some money. So guys go around and they collect sometimes metals and old barbecues, they're scrap, they're not worth anything, but they have scrap value to it. So basically, what does it mean when you put it at the bottom of your driveway? So if I do an action, I don't need to do that in front of 3 people. Even Rashi would say, I don't do that in front of 3 people because I'm doing an action, a ma'aseh, that demonstrates that I don't want that anymore. I'm taking it, I'm putting it at the bottom of my driveway. And everyone knows the bottom of your driveway. Exactly, by the way, what is the relationship between the owner of the house and the bottom part of your grass? Do you own that? Do you not own that? You're responsible for it, but I'm not sure if you own it.
You actually don't own the
bottom part
of the driveway, yeah.
Right, you don't own the grass part. You don't own, right? The city is a tree there. That tree belongs to the city, right? I think not you.
The driveway too.
The bottom part of the driveway, right. I mean, you're responsible for it. If there's no sidewalk, right, they can put up a sidewalk, kofin sidewalk, right? Exactly. Yeah. But you're responsible for it, meaning maintenance, whatever. Like, they're not mowing it for you. They're not plowing the bottom of your driveway, right? You need to take care of it. You have to maintain it, but they own it, or they have access to it. But anyways, when you put it down there at the bottom of your driveway, you're effectively saying that anyone could come and take it. That's pretty... So even Rashi will agree that if I put an old barbecue out there, Mitch can come along and take it. I never mafkid in front of 3 people. How could Mitch come and take it? Isn't that Geneva? The answer is, my action demonstrates that I don't want it anymore. So even Rashi would agree, the Gemara would agree, that if when do you need to mafkir something in front of 3 people? Only if I'm not doing action. So here's my cell phone. I have 3 people. I am mafkir this cell phone. But I'm not doing anything. I'm leaving it on my Gemara. But since the 3 of you saw me make that declaration, so I'm mafkir, anyone can come and take it. But if I take the cell phone and I put it at the bottom of my driveway, I don't need to do that in front of 3 people. Because I'm doing a maisa. It's Zum Shebachol Yom. You're putting it on your driveway. You're making it mafkir. That was brought up last week as well. I think people were asking about what does that mean? When you put it on your driveway, you got it in front of 3 people. No one does that. And how do people come and take it? Right? Is that stealing? The answer is no. If you're doing in front of 3 people, being mafkir something is only when you're not doing an action. It's when you're just making a declaration. That you need to declare in front of 3 people that this is Hefker. But otherwise, I need to, if an action, which, I don't know if it's a trumpet, but it's also a way to demonstrate that you are.
So that's what's stronger. His definition. His definition of Bitul is a bit stronger.
So,
you're saying his requires an action to reinforce it, or a declaration.
No. So Totofos is saying, I don't need
the witnesses. You don't need 3 witnesses.
I don't need witnesses. I mafkir it, meaning when I am mevatel it, that is bitul, not from Hilchot Bitul, which is a Hilchot Pesach. It's Bitul, which really means Hefker, which is Choshen Mishpat. Rashi is saying Bitul Belev before Chatzot on Pesach, because everyone agrees after Chatzot on Pesach can't do Bitul, right? That before Chatzot on Pesach, the Bitul of Rashi is, for Rashi, a din that pertains to Pesach only, or Chaim. Or Chaim, right? It's a Hilchot Pesach din. Chiddush Hilchot Pesach. Nothing for Tosfot, no such thing. It's not its own construct. It's, how do I remove things from my possession? I look it up. Oh, Hefker. Can I get out of my Rishus? I mafkir something. I can either take it out of my Rishus, in a wheelbarrow, take it out, put the bottom of the driveway, or mafkir it. And this way I can mafkir it in front of my house. Or I can mafkir it maybe even somewhere else. Oh, what about 3? So he says you don't need 3. It's only me to Rabbanan. This is, Yeah.
When you're mevatel that piece of bread, are you rendering your relationship to that piece of bread ka'afar?
That's what Rashi says.
Or are you rendering the actual object, the actual piece of challah? You're rendering that.
I have a piece of challah sitting again. Remember, Chazal will say to burn.
The difference is if it's just your relationship, then it could still be chametz for someone else. If it's the actual object, then...
But I own it. Meaning, I own this bread. This is my bread. No one else's bread. I love this bread. Right? If I take this bread, and I say, this bread is, for me, dust of the earth. Rashi says, Bitul, I may siach dat from it. It says, I look at it, I don't see bread, I see dust.
It's for you, but not for anyone else.
Well, you're allowed to be acherim, right? Again, even Rashi, the Gemara says, right? Lo yired lacha, shel acherim ataroah. Shel kavod ataroah, acherim, right? I don't have, it's only my breath worry about.
No matter what way you mevatel it for somebody else, it's still chametz.
I can't be mevatel someone else's chametz.
Right, exactly.
Just like you can't be mafkir your possession, like that would work either way, right? I can't say, Kobe, your glasses or hefker, anyone here can take them. I can't do that. So same way I can't be mevatel your glasses or your bread or your anything for you. I can't do that. You do it yourself. Which makes sense, right? So, but because Rashi's not interested in ownerless, by the way, this is the Chiddush. He still owns it. But I own dust. Owning dust is not a problem. I think you can own dust on Pesach, right? So essentially, that's what Rashi says. Rashi says that all your cakes and all your cookies and all your breads. But this is midoraisa, midorabanan. I'm not very happy with you having cake around your house, right? We're going to demand something else, right? But min haTorah, bitul ba'masagi. That won't be a chazal will then say, no, we don't like that, right? Because at the end of the day, it's still a slice of bread. You might have a relationship with dust, but at the end of the day, the molecular structure of this item is still molecular structure of bread. And we're very used to eating bread and cakes. That's what we do. So therefore, the fact that even though midoraisa it's sufficient, that's not ideal. And we really want you to remove it, destroy it on a much more significant level. But you're not going to transgress by Rabbi Matzeh. Chazal came along and made a takana, but min haTorah,
So
you are scot-free.
What happens if you eat the dust that you just rendered?
So then you transgress a biblical prohibition, and you're Hefker on Pesach.
But you're not.
And according to some, even Erev Pesach. Well, the problem is you can't deny me eating. Again, it's dust from a psychological, emotional, you know what I mean? But practically, it's still a slice of bread. Yeah, you can't deny it.
For Balyamatze, the psychological thing works, but you're physically seeing it. Whereas if you're physically eating it, it doesn't work. And it just...
So again, that is the chiddush of the Torah. The chiddush of the Torah is that lo yireh lecha chametz b'chol lechasaor b'chol gevulacha, right? So what am I able to do is it's only lecha. If I can make it not lecha, then it'll be okay. Right? The Gemara even says, Shal Gavoa, I can even have Gavoa. Shal Nachri, Taroa. I can have Chris's chametz in my possession.
Whereas for eating it, there's no...
No, eating it is...
Lecha doesn't matter.
If I eat your chametz, if I walk over to your house and eat your chametz, I still transgress the raisa, right? Okay, the fact that I stole from you, okay, we'll deal with that later. That's a Choshen Mishpah question, right? But I eat your chametz, right? Yeah, that's a totally different... I mean, there's a relationship between them. At the end of the day, we don't want to eat it. If you don't own it, chances are it's going to be very hard to eat. You're right, I could walk over and to a bakery and start eating things that don't belong to me, but it's a stealing issue. Okay, so that will now, I think, help us a lot with this profile from last week. Right? Because when by the end there, we were kind of trying to figure out what exactly is a machlokas between them. So I think this will help us. Now, we also said in previous weeks, what happens if I close the door? So let's say, for example, let's go back to what I was saying before. This is a beautiful piece of bread, Krasinski's loaf of bread, and I am Mevatel it. Now, here's the problem. What happens if I bring this into my house and I lock all the doors to my house? So, it's very nice that I have psychologically, emotionally made a declaration that this is dust of the earth. But I've now done an action which is countering that thought process. Because by closing the door, I'm effectively upgrading the status to something much more significant. Because if it was really just dust of the earth, so then leave your door open. The fact that I'm doing shmira, the fact that I'm protecting it, we don't protect dust. The fact that I'm protecting it is nullifying my psychological, emotional declaration. That is going to be a problem. You're not allowed to close the door. What do I need to do if I want to close the door to my house? I need to take it outside. If I take it outside, again, nothing to do with Hefker. What do with Hefker? Right? How you doing? Right? I'm not being mafkir it. I'm just removing it from my house because I want to close my door. What about if they are pirurim? What about if I have scraps of bread? So I have small little, I think scraps of bread are called bread crumbs, right? Crumbs, right? So I have crumbs, right? Here we go. These are my crumbs, right? So crumbs, they're meaningless. They're insignificant. So I don't need to remove crumbs from my house because they're insignificant. They're to some extent, they're like they're nothing compared to I'm closing the door not because I want these crumbs. I want to protect my svarim. A lot of people are stealing svarim today, right? Or I want to protect my computer. So that's why I'm closing the door. But that would be okay to do. Pirurim, you'd be allowed to close the door. By the way, this is very similar to laws of Shemitah. Shemitah, it's the same thing. If all of a sudden you want to say everything's Hefker, and what do? You gather, 20 bushels of oranges, and you bring them into your house. Oh, you want they're Hefker? Anyone can come and take them. Oh, really? So if that's true, why'd you close your door? Right? That is preventing a barrier. You're saying it's silly. You're saying they're Hefker in name only, but you don't really mean it, do you? On Shemitah, all we care about is Hefker, right? That's all we care. Well, we're interested in is this Hefker, is this not Hefker? So that's where they, in fact, would work the same, both in terms of Chametz and in terms of Hefker. Meaning, by closing the door, for Rashi would be saying, you're making this meaningful, my loaf for bread is meaningful, and despite the fact that I said it's dust of the earth, I don't really mean it. Why is it that I don't really mean it? Because I'm closing the door and I'm protecting it. And if the whole point of making it dust of the earth is Hesach Hadat, well, there's no Hesach Hadat if you close your door. That explains the Gemara we went to Duff earlier. It's a counter statement. I'm upgrading this to something important. Something which is important, you protect. If it was dust of the earth, you wouldn't protect it. Crumbs, I don't care about. Crumbs are crumbs. That's the same by Shemitah as well. Do you want to bring in a whole barrel of apples into your home, and you're saying, oh, they're Hefker, anyone could come and take it. Okay, so then why are you closing your door? You're upgrading it to something which is important. So what must you do? You got to take it outside. By taking it outside, you're showing it's really Hefker. True by apples and oranges. It'll also be true by bread as well. So if you have bread in your house and you want to close your door, you got to take it outside. You have to remove it from your home. Not because of lecha. Has nothing to do with ownerless or not ownerless. It's that I can't leave it inside because I'm upgrading it. It's counter to Hesach Hadat. It's counter to dust. No one protects dust. No one wants to make sure that their dust doesn't get taken, right, or dusty. Who cares? It's dust, right? That's the issue. So for Rashi would say that's a problem with closing the door. So that's a really neat way of, I don't know if it's neat, but it's just a way of trying to understand the two different approaches. Because I'm being mashamar it. Okay? Is that hopefully that clarified a little bit what we did last week, and in terms of for this week as well. Okay, any questions so far? That was a good summary of what we've been kind of working on for the past couple of weeks. Okay, so the Rambam, just to throw in the Rambam, which is in source 5, is defining it very similar to Rashi, right? And this is, again, we highlighted this before, but it's worthwhile mentioning. Look at Rashi, look at the Rambam, source 5, halacha beis, right? So it's 2:2, perak bet, halacha bet, umahi hashpata, zo amura b'torah hi shivatel chametz b'libo, v'yachshov oto ka'afar, v'yasim b'libo she'ein b'rshato. You see this? He puts in his heart she'ein b'rshato chametz klal. But is it in his rishos? Practically, the answer is yes. It is. Meaning, we make it as if it is not in his rishos, but practically it is in his rishos. It's sitting on his bookshelf.
So how can Totofos say that if you're going to do a mitzvah, like you're going to Brit Milah, and then you have comments in your house, you can just make it Hefker?
Make it Hefker.
How's that qualified as Hefker if it's within your shoes? It's not outside. How can you say that?
So, I could make something Hefker if it's in my rishos. No, so again, both Rashi will agree.
It's inaccessible to everyone.
Right, okay, so again. You're saying if I have a dough sitting on my kitchen table.
Yeah, it's in a locked room. In a locked room, and you're on your
way to mitzvah. You're like, I can't go back. I'm not going to
go back.
Be on time. I won't be able to give.
Says you can make it Hefker.
The Gemara says you can make it Hefker. Totofos can argue with that. But meaning, Totofos, the Gemara says you Mevatel b'libo. Totofos says, what does that mean? You make it Hefker. You mafker it, right?
Yeah.
So, if you are mafker it, and both for Rashi and for Totofos, and it's in a locked, enclosed room, both would say that's not going to fly. That type of Hefker might not work. It's going to have to be in a place that people will actually have access to. both for Rashi and for Tosfot. Otherwise, you're right, it's a joke, right? Not Hefker if it's in a sealed, contained, locked room, right? Send a text message to the wife, don't unlock the door, or I'll unlock the door or something. The door open.
The Rambam would.
It's Rambam is the same thing. I mean, everyone's going to have to agree. That he says it here too. The end of the Rambam is the shekoch hamesh b'rshuto harehu ka'afar u'chtavar she'in bo tzorech klal. That you have to look at it that it has no tzorech, that it has nothing to it. I think the Rambam is going to also have to argue though that if it's I'll leave your door, but that's a Gemara, right? That's the Gemara of Gimel.
It's also now today, most people have chametz in a cupboard somewhere that they close up.
Right, so that's going to be different. You know why?
You're selling it.
Because you actually sold it.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So since I sold it, since I don't remember, the halacha is shel acherim v'shel nachri. You are allowed to be roeh, meaning you are allowed to keep it in your reshus of a non-Jew. The question is why. That's actually a good question. Why is that? So it must be that since it's all about eating, what are we worried about? We're worried about they're going to come to eat chametz. We discussed this a while ago. That really is the issue here. So I need to create a barrier to eating. Since Chris owns my chametz, yes, it's true that I have to, I can open up my pantry and access my Cheerios, but it's owned by Chris. That appears to be enough of a barrier, despite it being in my locked pantry or not locked pantry. That seems to be enough of a barrier because it's owned by Chris. Right? The Gemara will talk about a case. What happens if you have bread, you have a mound of stuff that fell on it, rubble that falls on it. So I'm not obligated to go, even midrabanan, by the way, to go, remove the rubble, hit that piece of bread, and get rid of it. Incinerate it. Why? Because it's already so inaccessible because of all the rubble in there, that appears to be sufficient. That's by gavoha, same idea. If it's hakdesh, if it's truma, that's actually enough of a barrier. We need to create just a one-level barrier to it. So even if it's there, if there's a mound of stuff on it, that appears to be enough of a barrier. I don't need to do maybe anything more than that. So, but good question. So then what happens after Chatzot on Pesach, on Erev Pesach? After Chatzot and Erev Pesach, what happens? Chazal say, you're not allowed to be mafkirit. Everyone agrees. Why not? Because you could only be, sorry, I didn't mean to say, that was the wrong word to use. You're not allowed to be mevatel it. Right? You're not allowed to do, you're not allowed to, for Rashi, you can't do Bitul. For Totofos, you can't make it Hefker. Why? Because the Gemara says, we take it out of your reshus. Just like I can't say, Spiegel's glasses or dust of the earth. Spiegel's glasses or Hefker. I can't do that. They're his. I can't do that for someone else's possession. After Chatzos on Erev Pesach, the Gemara says, the Torah took it out of your reshus, and you can't be mafkirit, you can't mevatel it. Can't do Bitul. Can't do it. Says Totofos, what's the only thing? Tashbitu seor mevatechem. What must you do? Tevaru. Burn it. Now Rashi's going to say, yeah, you can also burn it. There's two different opinions, Chachamim and Rabbi Meir, I think. One says, burn it in any way possible, mefazeh beruach, grind it up. One says, no, only sreifa. That'd be a machloket between them. What's the way to do it? That's a technical question, really, for all intents and purposes, right? So, but everyone, even Rashi is going to say that after Chatzot on Erev Pesach, you cannot be mevatlet because Chazal took it out of your reshus. It took it out of your reshus. You can't mevatel something that's not in your reshus, and therefore, what's left? Burn it or destroy it in another means. It's not enough to do Bitul. Right? And, what about then by Rabbi Matzeh? No. This is the paradox we said before. They put it into your reshus to be over and by Rabbi Matzeh. but not enough into your rishus, so to speak, that you have control over it to mevatel it. It's a strange concept, right? That they basically gave it back to you to transgress, but they took it out for you to nullify. So the only thing you can do is burn it, just destroy it. So that's why if you find chametz on Pesach. So again, we in the modern era, which is clearly in the modern era, I mean, tons of Gemara, everyone does Bitul. Everyone does Bitul, right? In fact, the language of Kol Chamira is they do both. They do Harve Mafkir and they make it like dust of the earth, Afrakara, right? We do both. We hold both opinions. The whole language that we use is the opinion of all the Rishonim. Try to create it into one text. This way, according to all opinions, we've, shall we say, covered our bases. So you've done that. Oh, if you find bread, I told you my story, right? I found a cookie at this horse at my parents' house. My kids used to ride on, and I don't remember if it was Chol Moed or if it was Yantif. We discovered half a cracker in the mouth of the horse because my kids would pretend to feed it. Whatever. So, what do? We destroy it, we burn it, we destroy it on Pesach. But that's not Mina Torah, it's only Mina Rabbanan. Because Mina Torah, I'm Mevatel Chametz. I'm not over by Rabbi Matzeh. But we say, you know what? Don't have cookies, don't have cakes lying around, because you might come to eat it. I don't own it, you might come to eat it, so we destroy it if you find it on Pesach.
How could you burn something that's not yours? Like, who are you to burn something that doesn't belong to you?
Because they're dust, so it doesn't have an owner, really. I mean,
Right. So, I see what you're saying. Because I sold it to Chris.
No, not.
No, because you nullified your own.
Yeah, I nullified.
Right, but wait, meaning I made it like dust of the
Actually,
earth?
that's an even better question. If you've sold it,
right,
and it belongs to Chris, how could you then burn it
if it belongs to Chris?
Yeah.
So, if we find, this is where, you ever notice that some rabbis will say in their form, please tell me where you keep your chametz? You ever notice that?
Yeah.
You have to say, cupboard, fridge, pantries, right? So one of the problems with that is that you're potentially getting yourself into trouble.
Put somewhere else.
What happens if it's somewhere else? So you could say, which is why, and again, Pesach, we really cover all. We also have to make a distinction on Pesach. What's Mina Torah? And what's Rabbanan? Mina Torah, everyone agrees, Bitul Ba'al Masagi. Rashi Totofos just says that's Hefker Ba'al Masagi. Right? But that's how he translates Bitul. It's just Hefker Ba'al Masagi. But everyone agrees that just by rendering it dust/ownerless is all you need to do. But we're so worried about chametz, we go out of control. We sell it to Chris. But what it must be that what do we sell to Chris? We sell to Chris things that we intend to sell to Chris. So if I find a cracker in the corner, I'm selling Chris what's in my cupboard. So you're right. It could be that you did sell that to Chris. But see, this is where what we sell is kind of I don't use the word joke because it's not a fair word to use. It really is a transaction, right? And if you ever sat, and it's worthwhile doing that, by the way, sitting at the sale to the non-Jew. So what we say is that we lift, there's like 1,000 forms, right? And we make Ted lift all the forms and make all these kinyan, and we do all the shitas, do every single shita possible how to make a kinyan to a non-Jew. We do them all. So what we say is we don't use the word own these locations. We say whatever these 1,000 Jews own, gone, it's all yours. So you're right, even that cracker that we really found in the mouth of the horse, really, technically, do I really need to burn it? It's Chris's. Why am I burning it? Yeah. But because it's not in that pantry, and because in that thing, I'm not really stealing from him. Like, you're right, it's like, well, I'm worried that it's, because it's in my hand now, maybe because I gotta kind of burn it. So you're right, it's strange. You probably don't even need to. You could probably just throw it back into the cupboard. We don't really like this whole handling chametz thing, and there's a mitzvah. There's a mitzvah l'sarfo if you didn't sell it, but since you sold them, it's one of those things that we got to come across it. The best thing to do is to destroy it. It's almost like a chumrah and a chumrah because we mevatel it, we sold it. If you find this cracker, you'll still incinerate it. But you're right. We're not worried about Geneva from Chris, because Chris is, but that kind of was maybe just like was in the pantry, but not really. You're right. It is strange.
It seems like it's the first level that we talked about.
Like,
First level in terms
you
of
could either make it inaccessible or sell it.
right. So again, selling we just do right to make it. Selling we do if we don't sell our chametz. So even if we render it das, have you ever lock a door at night? I cannot keep a box of chairs in my house over Pesach if I just make it ownerless because then I gotta leave my door open, which Thornhill's safe, but it's not that safe, right? My front door open, everything open in order to make it Hefker or das. But by closing it, my front door, I am countering my declaration of ownerless or das. So I can't do that. So I have to sell. If I sell it to Chris, that's sufficient. So I sell it to Chris, I can leave it in my house, and I can lock my door. Why? Because I'm not worried I'm going to come and take it, because it doesn't belong to me, it belongs to Chris. That's enough of a barrier. That's what we say, right? Which is what we all do, right? Who doesn't do that? Who really, I'm not saying, all right, I guess there are people who mamish remove all chametz from their home. Most people have some, even if some people are machmir not to sell chametz mina Torah. They won't keep their Cheerios around, but they might keep scotch around, might keep some alcohol around, which, again, the rice or not the rice, what the status of scotch or whiskey is, but that's out for now. Okay, I'm assuming that there isn't
It's Rabbi.
a Turbashir.
He's still
He's still in the Shabbaton.
Yeah.
So I have the booklets in my car. If people want to stick around and learn on their own, Turba or not, I don't know what. If we're going to go home. If there's no share. Okay, fine. So, God willing, next week, I'll think a little about what we're going to do. I might digress from the Gemara and just take a little couple of Mishnah Buras, which perhaps we could, shall we say, resolve and come out potentially very makel on. That he kind of makes a big issue out of using this approach. We'll see if we do that. If not, I'll just do a small topic for next week to close out and then to really pick up full force in a month from now and try to pick up the pace a little and move through the Gemara. Okay?